I'm obsessed with finding ways to make AI useful. And when the new Claude model came out, Sonnet 3.5, so I immediately began thinking of projects to do. And one night when I was putting my daughter to bed, I thought, you know what would be fun is if we made a game together. Now, I'm not a game developer, but I do have an unfair advantage because I am a data engineer, but I haven't written JavaScript or HTML in a decade. So I wanted to challenge myself to try to write a quick little web game using nothing but generated code from Claude. That night, I asked my daughter for a game idea. So with the game design in mind, and after talking to her, I started talking to Claude. Initially, I bit off more than I could chew, thinking we could do it in a 2D game engine. But I quickly realized proprietary frameworks that have their own corpus of documentation that are very specific to how that library does things is not where generative AI excels. But for something very generic or something very simple like HTML and JavaScript, it was phenomenal. Initially, I tried using the phaser game engine, but again, the code generated wasn't quite working. It didn't really understand the intricacies of that particular game engine and that library. And that's understandable at this stage. But when I scoped the game down a bit to make it a web-only based game, something that could render in your web browser, it worked phenomenally well. So the way Claude and I did this together is I gave it the initial prompt with the scope of the game, and it spit out a basic flow using nothing but shapes. Just some jumping, some one button event listener there. And then we iterated on it together. I think it's a lot to ask for to get it all right in one prompt. But by doing iterative prompting, we were able to slowly develop this game into something that was more aligned with my daughter's vision. We used DALL-E to generate images for the game, but that was difficult. We had to download them, resize them, put them in a background remover tool, save them as the right formats, and then structure them within the game and make sure they were referenced correctly and sized correctly within the game as well. So that required a bit of manual work. I wasn't able to get something that I could just click save and insert right in my game. Everything requires some resizing, some refining at this stage. If you're not an engineer, I think pulling this off, making a game using nothing but prompts is possible, but you'd have to continue to scope it down maybe a bit further. My HTML file was pretty simple, but our game code was maybe over 1,000 lines by the end of it for a very simple game with one level. It definitely helps to be an engineer because you know what questions to ask. You know how to break the problem down into smaller bite-sized pieces to continually iterate. And each iteration, I think, was enough for Claude to handle because it was giving me the next step. But it did a phenomenal job in maintaining the context of the rest of the game, telling me where to insert new code or where to make certain changes. It did get a little tedious to track all those changes because it wouldn't spit out the whole file originally, which makes sense given the limits on the context window. But it was doing a great job in remembering where things were in my code, keeping it consistent from each prompt to the next one. And then I would say things like, okay, now adjust the number of obstacles or now adjust the height with which the unicorn jumps. And it would quickly do that right away, which made this kind of game process really fun. And then in showing my daughter the game, she was like, let's change it to nighttime mode. Let's make a new level. And so I just open up Claude and say, hey, we want to change the background to night and we want to, change the clouds to stars. And again, Claude knows exactly what we're talking about, quickly changes the colors, renames some functions. So this experiment was awesome. We'll probably make another game soon. I think my son's going to want one. I'll show you some gameplay. All right. Say hi, Sophia.
Hi.
All right, Sophia. So what is it you asked me to make you the other day?
A game?
A game. What kind of game did you want?
A unicorn saving game.
A unicorn saving. What else did you want the game to do?
At the end, they're camping.
You ready? I'll click play, and then the way you play is you're going to hit the space bar to jump, okay? You ready?
What, this one?
Yes, the space bar. All right, here you go. You hit a rock. Try again. You're doing good. Good, you got the apples. Stay up in the air. Stay up in the air. Avoid the rocks. Good. What do you think so far?
Good.
Jump higher. Hold it. Good. Hold it.
I got 3 apples.
Oh, stay up in the air. Stay up in the air. Hold it. Hold it. Good. Fly. Keep flying. Just keep flying. You win. Look, what's that?
It's
Friends at the campfire? What did you think?
good. Well, I actually like more levels. Why is there only one?
All right, here. Why is there only one? Because that's how you start with a game. You start with only one level. All right, so you can see here, this is the first prompt I set to Claude. I told the AI it's going to be my game designer. I shared my daughter's idea, and I started to give it some scope here. Now, again, I had a previous conversation where I was biting off more like I chew, asking for a 2D platformer and what game engine to use. but I decided to scope it down because that was getting a little too complicated and we had a fail there. With the new artifact feature, just gives you the code right here that you can copy or you can save, and it was an excellent starter code. Now, this wasn't the full game. We had many iterations after it, and it would keep spitting out different pieces as I asked for it. So in this prompt right here, I wanted to separate the JavaScript code from the HTML to make it a little bit smoother. And then we started adding some features and clarifying some things, and it would give me the changes in this window, and it would remember the context from the other window. And so here's what the final product looks like. I had Claude eventually make a title screen with a button. You click play, and this is the night mode my daughter had. Spacebar jumps, eat some apples. You got an energy bar, which we've hacked to never run out right now, but you would eat the apples and eventually you win and you meet your friends by the campfire for a lovely unicorn campfire party. Now this is what it looks like in my code editor, VS Code. And this is just the basic HTML page. And then this is a massive, very ugly formatted JavaScript file that I spent no time trying to set up an auto formatter or anything. It was just sort of copying and pasting the snippets that Claude would give me to change. Then here are the different game assets, which I used ChatGPT to generate. And then I had to use various tools to get them to be the right size, remove the background, and make some changes in the JavaScript file here. Now, if I was going to extend this to something bigger, what I probably would do is from the beginning, structure things properly, ask Claude to break things down into different modules to make it more sustainable. So there you go. That is a fully AI-generated game. I did not write a single line of JavaScript or HTML. And other than that one issue with needing to wait for the grass to fully load before rendering and drawing it to the screen, that Claude had helped me debug, there were no issues with the code. It was really just a matter of copying and pasting the changes as we iterated. That was a bit tedious. But if I could do this over again or for the next experiment, I'll just do a better job setting up the file structure for the project to make things more manageable. It definitely helps to be an engineer here, but the fact that I was able to do this in a few hours of work in total to take my daughter's idea and turn it into a reality, even though it's small and it was not going to go anywhere, it was a really fun project. And it was really neat because I didn't write a single of those 500 plus lines of code that were there. I do think when it comes to things that are very popular like JavaScript and HTML, you can go very far with generative AI today. And if you're not a coder yet, you can even prompt Claude or prompt an AI to help you figure out what the right question to ask is. If you give it descriptions of what's wrong. Now, I knew enough to go open the console window to see errors in my JavaScript, but if you didn't know that, Claude would have suggested that to you. So if you have the initiative or you want to learn or you want to try something, like AI is a magic tool for that. You can work with it. You just have to figure out the right question to ask. But here's why I'm not worried about AI taking engineering jobs. While the code generation works pretty good and is great for basic stuff, there was a lot of rough edges. Especially in game development, the game assets when you're a coder are always a pain. It's hard to manage them, hard to get consistent assets. It needed a lot of hand-holding. There was one case where it had a bug in it, and the problem was the code wasn't waiting for our images to load. And so the game would start, but the background didn't finish loading. But I had to clarify that, and Claude did a great job in giving me debugging lines to insert that were relevant and made sense. It didn't spot its own error until I mentioned that it says we're failing to load here. But that was a line that Claude gave me to debug it with. So Claude kind of debugged its own self and got my input. And honestly, it probably would have got it faster if I didn't have to manually type the input in to say what was going wrong. And I think that's where agents come in and be really... Now, obviously at the frontiers, at the edge of technology where the complex stuff is being done, we're still going to need those engineers. Even if AI becomes super intelligence, we're going to need people there to help and work with it. And I think if your kid is studying to code right now, they should continue to learn to code because that's not going to go away. Having that engineering mindset, knowing what questions to ask, breaking the problem down into smaller bite-sized pieces, that is very important. What will change though is you probably won't need the syntax anymore. Generative AI is going to be the calculator for engineers where some of that mundane stuff you don't need to do, that boilerplate code, the low complexity problems, the simple problems, the solved problems, you can just drag and drop those things now, or you can have AI help iterate on it with you. So now all that mundane sort of easier things that the AI can do with ease, we don't have to worry about it anymore. It's like getting a calculator. Once you had a calculator, did you keep doing long division by hand? Has that impacted you in a negative way? I don't think so. If anything, you just go faster through life and get to work on the higher order things, the things where your creativity come in, the things where you get to be more human. You can spend more time connecting with people. So to have just a couple of hours with my daughter to get an idea of something she wanted to see, go ask Dolly for some images and then Claude for some code and put it together and run a game in a browser to make her smile and laugh. I think this was an awesome use of AI and it's really cool. But again, I think you're always going to need engineers to help see that big picture, to help know what questions to ask. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you'd like to try to make your own game with AI, or if you have an idea of another project you'd like to see done, let me know. Shoot me a comment, shoot me a DM. I love playing with these things. I think it's amazing, and it really is starting to unlock sort of the inner creative in you. And you can just do these fun projects without having to worry about the technical details of how to implement things.